Well, hello there and welcome. My name is Michael and this is Michael Helwig Interiors. If you're new here, I talk primarily about small space design. I also talk about tricky spaces and odd spaces. Really, my focus is going to be a lot on floor planning and how to arrange furniture in odd rooms, weird rooms, different shaped rooms that are a little bit more difficult to lay out. And that's what I really talk about. Do me a favor, if you really like the videos, like and subscribe them. It helps me out. I'm brand new here on YouTube and different places. So this is like my second video in a series that I'm doing. So I do write blogs. So if you go over to Michael Helwig Interiors, you'll be able to see all kinds of different blogs with lots and lots of information on small space design going back from probably about 2017 or so. So there's lots of stuff over there to read about. If you're having problems with anything, I've got everything from art, rug sizes, how to lay out a long, narrow living room, all kinds of stuff. Those are the ones that are really the big hitters over on my site. So if you have any interest in those, go over and check those out. But today I'm going to talk about something that is a little bit touchy. I have a problem with some stuff that I see in smaller spaces and in awkward spaces. So this video is all about my 11 peeves when it comes to small space design. The thing is about small space design, some things work, some things really don't. And I know that this video is probably going to get a lot of people talking about how I should have said this, I should have said that. These are just my opinions. So I'm a design pro. I've been at this for a long time. And these are just what I've kind of come across in the last probably 10 or 15 years that I've really been doing small space design. So without further ado, let's get right into my 11 peeves about small space design. Okay, so I have my handy dandy list and I'm ready to start reading off all of these peeves for you. So, one thing I have to say before I start, my dog is here. So her name's Marky, she's awesome. She'll probably jump up in the chair behind me. She's also down here on the floor. She's gonna be all over the place. So if you do hear her, I apologize. This is just life. This is life how it is for me. So anyway, getting back to this list of my 11 peeves. Peeve number 1, actually it's peeve number 11. We're gonna go backwards. So we're gonna go backwards in time with all of this stuff. So peeve number 11 is giant television sets. I'm going to look down at my screen every once in a while, so I'm trying to maintain eye contact, but every once in a while I'm going to look down just to kind of like review some notes so I know what I'm covering and I'm not just completely speaking off the cuff because it'll probably go off the rails really quick because that's just how it is with me. So anyway, getting back to it, I'm going to talk about my number 11 peeve, which is giant televisions in small rooms. Now, I know a lot of people love giant televisions. There are so many people who like, watching sports and stuff like that on big TVs or watching movies on big TVs with theater surround sound and all that stuff. That's great. I have no problem with that. What I do have a problem with, though, is bigger televisions in smaller spaces. They just don't work. They make things really it's too congested. There's just too much going on. So if you can feel the breeze from the car chase in the James Bond movie, your television's too big. If the people on the TV are the same size as the people in the room, your television's too big. So that's just how it is. It's just going to be too much for this space. With smaller spaces, with angled walls, with things that you want to kind of diminish when it comes to making it a focal point, if the room is small, and you got lots of stuff going on, a giant television is just going to accentuate the smallness of the space. It's going to draw the attention to, it's the focal point of the room, so it's going to draw your attention to that smallest thing, the biggest problem probably in the room, which would be an angled wall, or, I've seen televisions where they're so huge and then, they're mounted above a fireplace, which is a whole other situation. I'm not even going to get into that, but that's not one of my favorites either. But if it has to be, it has to be. However, if you have a giant television over a super small fireplace, that doesn't make any sense. So, that's just one of my things here. My dog is just going to keep pushing all this stuff all over the place. Anyway, so, I go on a walk every morning and I pass this house near my house. It's about the same size as my house. Now, I write about small spaces, I mentioned before. I live in a small space. My house is only about 800 square feet, so I know of what I speak. And I walk by this house in the mornings on my morning walk, and it's usually kind of dark outside, and you can still see the television on through the windows in the front. There's some shears in the front windows. Anyway, So there's this gigantic television in this room, which is only about 9 feet deep. So it's very similar to my living room. My living room is about 20 feet long, which is quite long. And my width of my living room is only about 10 feet, 9.5 feet. So this house is pretty much the carbon copy of my house. And this television is mounted on this wall, and I can see this person sitting down on the couch, which is only, a few feet away from this gigantic television, with their head like this, watching the television. Now, explain to me, how is that comfortable? How is that a comfortable way to go about watching television? I don't understand. So that's what they're doing, and not my thing, but hey, more power to them. That is what they want to do, then that is what they want to do. So, if you have a smaller television or a smaller room, you want to get a smaller television. And I'm not talking like you need to get like a 19-inch TV for a regular room, but I'm talking probably like 42 inches, maybe 50 inches. That's pretty appropriate size for a smaller room, a room that's about that size, 9 feet by maybe about 20 feet long. You don't want to have something that's going to be so huge that's going to take up, that much real estate, because, as I said before, it's just going to draw attention to the things that you don't want the attention drawn to. So that is my number 11 peeve. It's not number 1. Number 1 is a good one. Stay tuned. Okay, so peeve number 10 is chair rails. Specifically chair rails in rooms that are not a dining room. So I don't understand this. I really don't get it. Chair rails, of course, historically are meant to save your wall from chairs that back up against it, so that the back of the chairs doesn't scuff up the wall, or they don't scuff up the wall. So that's a great thing. And a lot of historic houses, chair rails can be decorative. Sometimes they have dental molding. Sometimes they've got very smooth molding. Sometimes it can be a little bit more contemporary. A lot of Victorian houses have them. So I understand the context of having a chair rail, and that's good. What I don't understand is when they get translated to other spaces. So if you have a chair rail in a den, if you have a chair rail in a bedroom, if you have a chair rail in a bathroom or a powder room, I don't quite understand what the purpose of that is. And so, the other part of it too is that I don't really love chair rails that are crisp white and then you have a color underneath and a different color on the top. That just looks like that's just too much going on. So couple that with a smaller room, or a room that has angled walls or awkward kind of layouts to the space, architectural details, maybe bump outs, bump ins, things like that. When you have a chair rail that separates all of that stuff, it just highlights, the top, the bottom, this crisp white, chair rail that goes around the entire room, and it really just draws the attention to all of those things that maybe you don't want to draw the attention to. So something like the big television, you're drawing attention to maybe a smaller wall or a smaller fireplace underneath the giant television, like I said before. This way, you're drawing attention to, this angled wall or this small wall or something like that, and then you're highlighting it even further with those different colors and that stark white line that goes all the way across. Okay, so that's not something that you want to do. So number 10, chair rails. What are you doing? You're like a crazy. Anyway, so number 9. So my peeve number 9 is accent walls. Accent walls. Okay, so here's what I have to say about accent walls. 1997 called, and they want their accent wall back. So I know that sounds a little bit catty, but here's the thing. Accent walls are different than focal walls. So focal walls are popular now. Focal walls, you'll see them with the shiplap, you'll see them with stone, you'll see them with like a wallpaper, you'll see them with all kinds of different applications on them. And I'm all about focal walls because that's where the focus of the room is. An accent wall, historically, going back to 1997, when you have an accent wall, it's not necessarily going to be a focal point in the room. So basically, an accent wall can be any wall that you want to draw attention to for whatever reason. So if you have, your walls are beige, and then you have that one burgundy accent wall, hello 1997, I mean really, what's the purpose of that? You really don't have a purpose for it, because that burgundy wall, could be the angled wall in the room that you want to diminish the attention to. Or, if the room is small and you have a burgundy wall behind the sofa, no one's looking behind the sofa. Your focus is going this way. If your television is this way, if your view back outside is this way, if your fireplace is this way, the focal point is where you want your focus in the room to be. So having a focal wall is a-okay. Having an accent wall, especially if it's a high contrast, different color accent wall, it's just not going to work in a smaller space because it's going to shrink your space down. It's going to take your attention and it's going to draw it right to that spot that you don't want your attention to go. So accent wall, no thanks. This is one of my favorites. Okay, so my peeve number 8 is high contrast or high color contrast curtains. So if you know me, if you've followed my designs, if you've looked at any of my portfolio stuff on my website, you're going to see that I do a lot of neutral colored walls. I love a white wall. It's just my thing. It's just my aesthetic. It doesn't have to be everybody else's. I can design other colored rooms. That's totally fine. But I like a white wall with white curtains. Boring. I know, I get it. But my rooms can get excited different ways. They can have lots of different textures and colors and different art and stuff like that in the space. So it doesn't have to be like dull. My point is, when you have a wall color and your drapes that go over your windows are similar, maybe not the exact same color, but maybe the exact same color as your wall, it all kind of blends in together. So, and this is incredibly important when you have windows that maybe are off center. So you have like one window way off in a corner someplace, or you have one window in the center of a wall and then you have nothing else on either side of it. Okay, so when you put up, a brightly patterned curtain on that one window, either it's off to the side or it's in the middle of the wall and there's nothing else going on around it, or it's way off by itself, you're drawing the attention right to it. When your curtains are a similar color or a similar, like a pattern that has the colors of the wall in it, for example, if you want to go a little bit more exciting, okay, I'm not going to judge, it's just my thing. But if you have a window or windows, and if you have drapes that are the same color as the wall, it's going to be better because it's going to highlight the continuation of the wall as opposed to draw the attention to that odd shaped window or odd angled window or odd positioned window. That's really what I'm looking for, the odd positioned window. So now here's the other thing too. You can have dark colored walls. You can have very dramatic paint colors in your rooms. If you cover your windows with drapes that are similar in color to that wall color, it's going to blend in together. So say for example, I'm going to try and insert a couple of pictures here so that you can kind of see what I'm talking about. You'll see vibrant colors, and you'll see different things like maybe patterns. So one other thing that I really like is patterns on window treatments if the pattern is in the room itself. So for example, if it's a bedroom and you've got a patterned window treatment and your duvet cover and bedding is the same pattern, that's kind of interesting too. If you have a room like a small den or something where you have lots of wallpaper, like the whole room is wallpaper and it's very dramatic, why not have the same pattern on the windows for the window treatments as well? So that's just going to kind of tie everything together. That's the way that you do exciting. That's the way that you do dynamic when it comes to window treatments. You don't want to do, a white wall with, bright blue curtains that are incredibly patterned with lots of stuff going on, circles and squares and all kinds of stuff going on with it, or floral patterns or stripes even. It's just going to be too much. It's going to really draw your attention to those places in the room where you maybe don't want your attention to go. So for example, again, like that window that's going to be off to the side, or that single window with nothing else going on around it. It's not going to blend into the background anymore. Your furniture, other things that kind of go in front of all of that stuff. A lamp that goes in front of a window, a credenza that goes in front of the window, a closed up dresser that goes in front of a window or partially covers a window, and then you have the drapes behind it. It's all layers. It's giving you layers going from the front to the back. And all of those things are going to kind of work together to make a pretty picture, as opposed to just crazy, all kinds of different patterns and colors and things like that are just going to take your attention and focus it on that exact space that you don't want your attention focused on. So kind of getting the point of this is kind of where I'm going with this particular post, is that it's all about diminishing what you don't want to focus on and kind of highlighting or accentuating what you do want to focus on. So that's really what I'm talking about today. And I'll be back with the next tip. Okay, so where am I now? I am on no variation in texture, color, or scale in your decor. Okay, so have you been to somebody's house and all of their pictures are lined up, in a straight line on the wall? Or if they have a fireplace mantle, all of the decor is the same height. It's like a straight line right across the mantle of the fireplace. What's that about? There's no interest. There's nothing to give you some oomph in the room. So up until this point now, I've been talking about, how to take your smaller spaces and accentuate what you want to focus on and kind of diminish what you don't want to focus on. Well, the same thing happens when it comes to your art and all of your decor as well. You want to vary your textures in your space. You want to vary the shapes in your space. You want to vary the height of things in your space. So going back to that mantle above the fireplace, you don't want to have everything in a straight line. You want to have taller things. You want to have shorter things. You want to have different shapes. I'm a big fan of layering on a mantelpiece too. So think about putting a giant mirror above a mantelpiece, maybe something round or square. Something quite dynamic and large is going to give you that interest in the space too. A large piece of art. I like big art over a fireplace, even if it's in a smaller room. We're going to get to that. And that's another little hint for what's coming up in a bit. But if you have a large piece of art above the fireplace, and then you have in front of that different layers of things that kind of take your eye up. So for example, if you have a spot in the painting or whatever, and this is just hypothetical, but if you have a spot in the painting that has, a higher focal point, in the painting, you might want to have a high thing next to that spot in the painting where the focal point is. So like maybe a vase with flowers that are higher, or a vase with decorative branches that are higher, or pampas grass, things like that are going to give you some height and some drama. Think about like a branch that has, all kinds of different angles, and all of the little tributaries of the branch are coming off it in different places. That's going to give you some movement. It's going to give you visual interest and some movement in the space. Same thing with that art, that big art, you want to layer smaller things in front of it too. So for example, you want to layer, different textures, mix your metals, bring in woven pieces, bring in fabric things, bring in that focus to the front of it too, and get you that line so that, you have, like a Z. So I always talk about this even with my e-designs for clients. I'll point out a lot of times that your height of things are different, and you want to keep your interest and your eye going in different ways too. You don't want everything straight across, because straight across is boring. There's nothing to look at. It's great when you can look at a mantelpiece display or artwork or your accessories, and you can find different little things in them. Even though you've put them there, you might find different little interesting angles to it. You might find different little things in the picture that you didn't realize were there. It's all interesting. It's going to build this story. So that's basically what you're doing with all of it too. So keeping everything varied in height, texture, scale, and size, and color even, is going to give you some visual interest, and that's what you're looking for. So that is that tip. We're going to come back with the next one, so see you in a second. So small wall art, that's the next one that I'm going to talk about. Small wall art in small rooms. It's bad enough when you have small wall art in big rooms, but it's just as bad when you have small wall art in small rooms. So think about it as, you're also diminishing that, you're diminishing the wall. You're not doing the wall justice by putting a dinky little piece of art on the wall. Your instinct a lot of times would probably lean toward, I have a smaller room, I've got this small wall, I can't really overwhelm it with something large. Pish posh, I say flush that one down, because when you put a large piece of art on a smaller space, it's going to give you dynamic, presence. It's going to give you an impact. It's going to give you a focal point that's exciting. It's going to draw attention to it. It's going to elicit comments. People are going to be excited. They're going to be like, oh, they're going to be taken aback by it even. So, you want that kind of reaction. You want that kind of reaction when you walk into the space. When you have a large piece of art and it's unexpected, or even if you put it there yourself, you're enjoying it because it's unexpected. It's surprising. It's fun. When you counter that with little frames, or a little frame, or a group of little frames, or a group of different size things, in a frame, that's not great, because it's just going to, it's jumbled, and it's not streamlined, and it's not focused. So when you have a large piece of art and it's very dynamic, and it gives you that kind of presence that you're looking for, that's really what you want to do when it comes to a room. You can pick up the colors in the room. You can pick up different, accent pieces. If it's in a living room and, you've got a nice patterned rug and then you have the same type of colors in your accent pillows and the same type of colors in your art, that really kind of ties the story together. You can do that with small art too, but it isn't going to be as impactful as a large piece of art. So if I had my choice, and I'm giving you this choice as well. So if you have this choice, always go for the bigger piece of art. Even make it a little bit uncomfortable, like when you're buying the art going, oh my gosh, is this really gonna be too much? It's not going to be too much because it's going to be the right amount of exciting and the right amount of impact. So that is what I want to say about art. And peeve number 5 is shoving furniture against walls. Okay, so I've heard this referred to as wall-itis. I believe that Mr. Kate kind of coined that one. She's one of the other YouTubers here. And so basically what it means is all of your furniture is pushed up against walls. So you have, say for example, an odd shaped room, and you don't think that you can fit a large sofa in a little kind of nook that you think that the sofa has to go in because it's opposite a focal point or whatever else, and you think that you have to push that sofa into that nook, and that only leaves this other wall, this perpendicular wall, for like a chair or a love seat or something else, some other form of seating. But you have your sofa over here, and then you have your other secondary seating way over here, and you're kind of like, you're yelling across the room. You can't, there's no way to bring everything in together. There's no conversation grouping going on. Everything is pushed back against the walls. So, and you also think that this is important to do because, as you're walking through the space, now say for example, not that I'm going off on a tangent, but here's a little bit of a tangent. You have a room with multiple doorways. So you have a door that maybe enters into a hallway. Then you have a door opposite that on the other wall that enters into the front entry of the house. Then you have a wall that has the back, large entry maybe into the dining room space or into the kitchen area, and that only leaves one solid wall, and you have windows on that wall. So you're really confused about where to put your furniture. And then your instinct is to kind of push your furniture back as far as it can go onto the wall so that you can get through all those doorways, and heck with blocking the window and all that stuff, right? So this is important to understand. So in that case, I always recommend basically putting your furniture in a floating configuration. So basically what that means is your furniture is not pushed against the walls. Your furniture is positioned in the center of the room. The sofa perpendicular to the arm of the sofa. You have a chair, maybe perpendicular to the other side of that, you have a love seat. Or you have two chairs flanking a sofa, and it's facing, the focal point, which is the television or the fireplace or the view to the backyard or wherever the focal point in the room is. The point is, your furniture is not pushed against all the walls. You've created a different pathway through the space now. So you've created a little kind of walkway behind the sofa, or you've created a walkway in front of the furniture grouping going out, through the space into the different archways and doorways and different places into and out of the house. So, and that's okay. That's what you really want to do. You don't want to push all your furniture up against the wall because it does make the wall feel very cramped. It also makes the furniture feel like an afterthought. So basically, it's kind of like your furniture has just been plopped into the space, and this is the only place that it can go, and, oh well, this is how we have to live with it now. I say absolutely not to that. I say give your center of your room some attention and position your furniture in a nice conversation grouping, kind of what I've described. Sofa flanked by chairs or love seats, secondary furniture flanking the sofa, facing the focal point in the room. And I think that's the way to go with it, and that will help you avoid the dreaded wall-itis. Now I'm talking about there's too much furniture in the space. So especially for small rooms, awkward rooms, oddly shaped rooms, weird rooms, rooms that are tough to lay out, and you're cramming all of this furniture into the space. And I'm talking like you got your main pieces, sofa, chair, accent chair, you got maybe a bench, you've got maybe accent chairs kind of stuffed into the corners of the room. It's too much. There's too much going on. So what I say, my number one tip for this is to decorate your room, to design your room with furniture that you use every day. So here's an example. If you entertain 20 people for dinner, maybe once or twice a year, do you really need to have seating for 20 all the time? No, of course not. We have expandable tables. We have leaves that go into dining tables. We might be able to store some of the, extra chairs in the basement or up in a different room. It's not always going to be in this space, right? You're not always going to have the table set up for 20 people. Unless you're expecting 20 people every single Sunday for dinner, then that's a different story. But if it's once or twice a year, that's not how it goes. Okay, so let's translate that to like your living room. You don't need to have, a bench and accent chairs stuffed in the corners and a sofa and chairs and all kinds of stuff. Lots and lots and lots of, furniture where you're literally tripping over furniture or having to like walk awkwardly around the space in order to get through the space because there's just no place to walk in a clear path into the room. You got to get rid of some of that furniture, okay? Smaller rooms really need that consideration. They really need to be planned out. They need to really be focused on because you have walls that have bump outs in them. You have, walls that have built-ins in them. You have a bank of windows on a wall that you might not want to cover up. You have multiple doorways in a space. Again, back to the multiple doorways in a space. It's all, all of these little things that happen with these tough to design rooms. When you have too much furniture in them, it's really going to impact how you're living your life. So my number one tip is to design your space for the way you live your life every single day. If you have, you and your spouse and maybe a couple of kids, you don't really need to have seating options, 3 seating options for each one of those people. You have a sofa, you have movie nights on a sectional, you have, swivel chairs, you have recliners that people can use that are going to be fitting the bill just perfectly for what you do every single day. And then when you do have those extra, people coming over for different holidays or events going on, during the year, then you can bring in different things, folding chairs. People are not going to be like, oh my gosh, I can't go back to Carol's house because she had a folding chair for dinner one night. They're not going to care. They're not going to care. They're going to come back. It's all about the food anyway. So, and we're not even talking about food tonight. So, but what I'm saying is they're not going to fault you for having, a couple of things that are makeshift or used in the moment. I've got a bench in my bedroom at the foot of my bed that I'll bring out if I have more than 4 or 5 people in my house because my house isn't big. My living room isn't big. And I might want to have, an extra love seat type of, furniture for a couple to sit on, instead of, everybody crowding on the couch or crowding in on the other chair that's in there all the time. So you can make do with things. I've got this chair back here that my little monster's on, and that can come out every once in a while too if I need it to. So I've got different things positioned around different places in the house, and that's another good tip. Think about different rooms that you can store things in and then have things in so that they're not all congested into one space, which is not ideal for you. Small area rugs. Ooh, small area rugs. Holy. Okay, this is getting good because we're getting down to the final 3. And number 3, small area rugs. Let me start. I have to kind of compose myself here for a second. Okay, so if you have a small area rug in a big room, that's like, what are you doing? Why would you even bother doing that? And I understand why people try to put small area rugs in small rooms, especially if the walls are angled or it's got a strange layout. You're confused about what's going to fit into a space a lot of times. And I'm going to tell you that an 8x10 rug is going to fit in most size rooms. I have a very small room right now. Actually, I've got a wall over here and a wall right over here. You can see the corners of this room. So it's not a super big room. I've got an 8x10 rug in here underneath my desk because it fits. And because it absorbs the sound in the room, and because it gives me color and pattern and the things that I want, because I got very neutral going on up here, and one of these days I'll show you what's going on, onto the floor. You'll see it's it's a patterned rug. Anyway, point is, you can fit an 8x10 rug in most size rooms. Rugs are great because they're going to help you define the space, and I've said this a million times on my blog. In fact, if you go to my blog, pretty much every other blog is going to be about the placement of rugs, the size of rugs, the color of rugs, anything to do with rugs. I'm a big fan of area rugs on hardwood floors or solid surface floors because they're going to give you a place to put your furniture. I can look at an area rug and know that the sofa is going to go on the longest part of the rug. So if you have an 8 by 10 foot rug, your sofa, which is probably going to typically be in the 6, 7, or 8 foot long range, is going to go on that 10 foot long section, that side of the rug. Your secondary furniture, accent chairs, occasional chairs, maybe a love seat if you have the luxury of space for one of those, is going to go on the 8 foot side of the rug. So that's going to give you that perpendicular configuration. I'm all about leaving your rug, or letting your rug, not leaving your rug, but letting your rug distinguish where you're going to put your furniture, because that's really the purpose for it too. It's great for all of the things I mentioned before: sound absorption, color, pattern, texture, all of that stuff. That's great. I use area rugs as inspiration a lot of times too. You'll see that in a lot of my blogs as well. But if you look at the position of area rugs, you're going to see that it's just a natural place. My dog is snoring so loud back there. Holy cow. Rugs are just a natural placeholder for your sofa, for your furniture. And, you know, it's less confusing when you use a bigger rug. When you use a teeny tiny rug in a small room, and I understand that too, because as I said before, you know, your instinct is to go small in a small space. And I'm saying, you know, if you remember only one thing from this particular vlog, it's going to be about go big. You know, don't be afraid to go big in a small space. Bigger is better when it comes to small spaces. Just going to leave it at that for a second. But your pattern on your rug and all that stuff, your rug, you know, being a bigger piece in the room is going to give you the place to put stuff, and that is important, and that is why you want to have a larger rug, once again, at least an 8 by 10 in a smaller space. Okay, so we're down to number 2. Ooh, look at that, that's weird. So number 2, furniture placed on angles. I am not a fan. I'm not a fan of furniture placed on angles in large rooms, and I'm not a fan of furniture placed on angles in small rooms, especially in small rooms. If you already have angled walls, if you already have tricky bump outs or bump ins or nooks or anything else that is going to eat up floor space, putting your furniture on angles only takes up more of that space. So if there's one thing to remember from this particular peeve tip that I'm talking about with furniture on angles, is when you put furniture angled into a room, it takes up more of your space. So now, for example, you've got a whole section of wall into a corner maybe behind you where something could have gone, some other piece could have been, bookshelves, etagères, whatever, you know, we'll get into that another time. But when you have your sofa cutting through the center of the room on an angle, it's just weird. It's just weird. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to read right from the blog, because I think that these 3 points are really important to talk about. So my eyes are going to go down here for a second, but you're still with me and I'm still paying attention to you. So now, when you have angled furniture, it's difficult to clean around. And I always say that I would always miss the dust bunnies underneath the sofa, especially on the side that was closest to the wall. You know, you have this, you can walk behind it with the vacuum cleaner. You've got this big space, and then all of a sudden it kind of goes down into this corner because you've got it angled away from the wall. And so then what are you doing now? You're on your hands and knees, and you got the attachments, and you're underneath there. You're always going to miss something. It's never going to be perfect, okay? So the other thing about it is it also limits the access to adjacent furniture. So for example, you know, when I was younger and I had my first apartments, my furniture was always angled. And I'm going to throw my mom under the bus, so sorry, Mom, but my mom's furniture was angled most of the time too, especially her bedroom furniture. I don't remember a time when I was growing up in the house that I grew up in or in the house that they live in now where her bed wasn't angled into the corner, into one of the corners of the room. It doesn't make any sense at all, because especially in smaller rooms, which we've always had smaller rooms in my family, when you have a dresser or a chest of drawers at the end of the foot of the bed, and you're trying to get into the bottom, you know, drawers of that dresser, for example, the top ones you might be able to open up just fine. Where your footboard is, trying to open up those, you know, those bottom drawers, is going to be a challenge. It's always going to hit the bottom of the bed, so it's never good. So furniture that's adjacent to it, limits the access to all of that too. And then you just really can't navigate around it. So if you're ever, do you remember the Dick Van Dyke Show? I don't know if you remember that. If you're old enough like me, you can remember the Dick Van Dyke Show. It was on reruns when I was a kid, but I'm familiar with it. So in the beginning of the show, he walks in through the front door and he trips over the ottoman. He walks down a couple of steps, I think it is, and he trips over the ottoman because his wife, Mary Tyler Moore, moved the furniture or something during the day, and he didn't know where it was, and boom, it was in the middle of the room, so he tumbled right over it. So that's kind of what it reminds me of when you have angled furniture in a room. It reminds me of the beginning of the Dick Van Dyke Show, and it's never a good thing. You don't want to trip over it. That's not the way you want to live your life. So that's tip number 2, angled furniture in a space. It's a no-no. Let's get back with tip number 1, the biggest one yet. Well, my biggest one, and I'll be right back with that one in just a second. This one is my biggest peeve. It's actually the one that I have, that I was really inspired by the most to write in this post. And it's not a super long part of the blog either, which is weird. So if you go over and read the blog, you're going to see that it's a couple of paragraphs. But I think I had to kind of dial it back because it's such a hot topic for me that I can't even deal with it. So my number 1 peeve for small rooms. My dog is snoring. She's snoring. Anyway, I don't know if you can hear that or not. But my number 1 peeve for small rooms is things blocking doorways. I can't even. Okay? So the number of times I had fights with my ex about this one is, I don't even know how many times. It's been many, many times. But things in doorways, things that are blocking doorways, really just irritate me. He had a habit of putting things in our living room. In the first house that we lived in together, it was kind of like a big circular type living room. So we had all of the entrances into the space were on one wall, which was great. So we had this whole wall that we were able to put furniture on. And it was also opposite the fireplace and the television and all that stuff. So the whole focal point in the room was opposite of all of that, and it was great. But he insisted on putting a chair in the doorway to the kitchen. Not a little chair. I'm talking like a big chair with rolled arms, a big chair and a half. It was a monster. It had an ottoman, the whole thing, and it was in the way, and it drove me nuts. Fast forward to now. Got to throw my mom under the bus one more time. Sorry again, Mom. But she has a half of a china cabinet that we had in our old house that when they moved to this smaller house that they live in now, had to be broken up into 2 sections. So the one section is off in the corner of the room, which isn't great, but it's out of the way. And the first section that has like glass cabinet doors and places to put china and all kinds of stuff in it. It's basically a china cabinet. Is in the doorway to the kitchen. And there's probably about 9 or 10 inches of wall space kind of right past the doorway into the corner. And this thing has got to be at least 22 to 24 inches deep. You see where I'm going with this? So you're walking into the living room from the kitchen, which is a galley kitchen. It kind of passes like a shotgun right through the front door into the kitchen. And then you're walking into the living room where this gigantic cabinet is. And it just... Every time I go there, I don't hold my tongue. Who are we kidding? I tell them about it all the time. I'm like, Mom, we got to move this. It's got to be moved like now. This is just not good. So that's my number 1 peeve is furniture blocking doorways. And it could be anything. We used to have, cleaning the kitchen and putting the garbage can in the doorway used to make me nuts. So it's not like, any of this stuff is, it's easy for me to talk about because it's always right there for me. And where I live now, I'm very, 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 very conscious of not having things blocking doorways because it's just one of those things that sets me off into a spiral. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this blog. And if you did, I'd love for you again to like the video and to subscribe if you would be so kind. It would help me out tremendously. As I said, I am brand new here on YouTube. And I plan to do videos every week. So they're going to kind of coincide with my blog. So if you are a fan or subscriber of my blog, now you can be a fan and subscriber of these videos too, because they're not exactly the same as the blog. I don't read specifically exactly from the blog. I kind of like go off on my own little tangents. Hopefully this is good and it doesn't take too much editing for me to put together, and it makes it so that it's a little bit more interesting than maybe a flat read on a paper or a computer. But hopefully you're enjoying it, and I'd love to hear comments from you. Do you have any peeves for your space? So tell me all about it in the comments below. I'd love to hear, are there things in your house that drive you crazy that you'd love to change? Maybe it's something we can talk about. You know, hit me up. I'd love to give you a couple pointers if I can. So come back next Sunday, and I will be here again with a fresh new video. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.